Yes, I did, and I was kind of racked with guilt. Although the stroke wasn't I thought had I caused the stroke. It was a cryptogenic stroke, so we have no idea why it happened. It was a massive clot at the back of my head and affected both sides of my body. So the conversations we had were, will I ever be the same? Can I work again? Can we work as a team? And, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not the guy she married. Will she want to split? Which she was mortified at. She's like, oh my God, no.
This is the Recovery After Stroke podcast with Bill Gassiamis, helping you navigate recovery after stroke.
Bill from recoveryafterstroke.com. This is episode 130, and my guest today is Andy Dobinson. Andy is an ultra marathon runner and an endurance cyclist who experienced a cryptogenic stroke in 2017. Now, before we get started, you may notice that the audio of this episode is not that amazing, and this is due to technical difficulties we had with the Zoom connection between Australia and the United Kingdom. I've done my best to remove the background noise and tried hard to level out the volume, but the sound quality is far from perfect. I ask you though to persevere, as this interview will give you an insight into how important mindset is during stroke recovery. Also, if you ever wondered what else I can do to help you with your stroke recovery, you should know that you can now get recovery after stroke coaching right from the comfort of your own home. I too am a 3-time stroke survivor, and I've built for you what I was missing when I was sent home from hospital, in the hope that you don't have to do stroke recovery as tough as I did. Support packages give you access to a variety of tools 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that you can also work on other areas of stroke recovery, like adjusting to your new normal, even managing the grief that you may be feeling for your former self. With tailored support available from $8.50 per week, all recovery after stroke support packages bring stroke recovery to you in the comfort of your own home. To try out recovery after stroke support and see if it is right for you, you will get the first 7 days free, as well as a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. As a bonus, you will also get 2 face-to-face Zoom support calls with myself to take your recovery to the next level. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com/support to sign up. It won't cost you anything for the first 7 days, and you will get a full refund if you are not happy after 30 days. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Now it's on with the show. Andy Dobinson, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bill. Good to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good to meet you too. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Oh, my goodness. So it was 4:45 in the afternoon. I remember it well, on the 9th of February 2017. I was sitting right here because I work from home. And I was on a conference call, and literally out of the blue, with no warning, no precursor, no symptoms, nothing at all. It was if somebody had lit a blowtorch at the back of my head and pressed every single pin into the back of my head, and instantly these beads of sweat appeared and started dripping onto the desk. And you see what happened to me at that time. I didn't have a clue. I didn't know. So I was on a conference call, so I put myself on mute because I thought it would be very cheeky to just dial off the conference call. And I started feeling a bit, my goodness, I don't feel very good. So, you do the usual. You start and Google dizziness and leaning to the left. And it came up with this thing called peripheral vertigo. So I thought, right, that's it. I have peripheral vertigo, which is an ear infection. So I thought, I'm wearing an earpiece, I must have an ear infection. So I thought, right, okay, what to do? And I started feeling quite confused and cloudy, and just this pain, this intense pain. So I thought, right, paracetamol, Nurofen, I'll go to the kitchen. So I stood up and I was holding onto my desk, like swaying about, thinking, what is going on? And still on mute and still on the call, went downstairs, and by the time I'd taken 2 paracetamol and got to the bottom of the stairs, I couldn't walk. So I kind of climbed up the stairs, and by this time I started thinking, I'm a bit concerned here. So luckily the call had finished, and I thought I took my earpiece out and threw it into my office, and I was leaning against the wall, and I thought, I'm going to go and lie down, because I was starting to feel a bit scared. I was by myself at the time, and I was leaning against the wall because I was on 2 feet, but I was really unsteady, and I lay down, not knowing that apparently lying down flat can help recovery. I didn't know that at the time, and I rang my wife and I said, Nikki, I don't feel too good. And she went, what's wrong? I think I've got a migraine. And she went, you never get migraines. You've been working too hard, training too hard. Just lie there. I'm going off to my fitness class. I'll see you at 6 o'clock. And I drifted off to sleep, luckily, but feeling a bit funky is the best way I can describe it. Confused, scared, cloudy. Next thing I know, I hear his voice, Andy, it's me, where are you? So I'm lying on the bed, and as my wife opened the door, her words were, oh my God. And she said I looked grey, just completely grey. And we still didn't know what the hell was going on. So she flicked the light on, and I didn't react to it. So she thought, right, okay, that's not a migraine. You've not reacted to the light. So she says, right, she'd actually seen the FAST acronym on Facebook. So she went, right, okay, I don't know if this is a stroke, but let's just double check. So I swung my legs off the desk and said, say chicken soup. And I had what's now known as sticky mouth, and I couldn't really talk properly. And I was internally thinking, what's happening here? You know, raise your arms, and I was a bit lopsided, and she was like, I think we need to get an ambulance. And I was like, no, it's fine, I'll be fine, I don't want to be a burden on anybody. So I wouldn't let her in 999. So that there's a number in the UK, 111, which is, advice. And based on what my wife said, they said, I think we need to get you an ambulance. So these 2 big paramedics arrived and came in and hooked me up to all sorts. And the words were, not the best, but it's not the worst. But I think we need to get you to the hospital. So me, I tried to get up and I couldn't walk. That was it. I couldn't walk. So I was like this across 2 guys and like dragging my feet along the ground into the ambulance. And that was it. Then I was blue lighted up to hospital, straight into A&E, and you just, the next thing you see these faces looking down on you, and that was the start of them trying to work out what had happened. And it took them over a day to establish it was a stroke. They thought it was chronic fatigue. So you go through morphine, which was just crazy, and horrendous sickness, and they just didn't know what was going on. So you're put into the critical illness unit, and I was writhing about and being sick and just beyond scared at that point. Yeah. Then they give you a lumbar puncture, which is the most unpleasant thing in the world.
You had one of those, yep.
Yeah, and then they said, okay, you've had a lumbar puncture, just lie there and drink coffee. And I felt like going, I can't walk. Where the hell am I going to go? Then an MRI, and that was still, we don't know what's happened. And it wasn't until 5 o'clock the next day they gave me a CT scan. And I remember being in a wheelchair, just being sick into this bowl, and they get you back to the critical illness unit. And this little junior doctor walked in and they went, Mr. Dobinson. And I was like, yeah, right, okay, so you've had a stroke. I'm like, what? And it was just like my world had ended. That's it, game over. My life's done.
What kind of lifestyle were you leading before this episode in your life? What type of bloke were you? How did you live your life?
I was. Here's one for you. I was fit, but I don't think I was healthy, which I've now learned, because I was a fanatical cyclist where I would do my speciality was 24-hour bike races. I would do
Hang on a sec.
250, 300, 400 mile bike ride.
Hang on a sec. 24 hours straight?
Yeah. So, so example, I did a mountain bike race where you start at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning and you finish at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. And you just go round and round and round and round. So I did quite a lot of the 24-hour races, and I used to do big endurance rides, like 200, 300, 400 miles. And I did a lot of time trialing, so I loved cycling. And I just started trail running, which has kind of become a passion. But yeah, I was hugely active. But was I healthy? I don't know.
How did you get to the point where I've got a bike and I've always had a bike. And one day I wake up in the morning and I go for a ride. It takes about an hour and then I come home and I put the bike back. How do you go from riding the bike like that to eventually getting to the point where you're riding it for 24 hours? Like, did that just happen in your head one day? I'm going to do this 24-hour thing, or is it a slow burn and then eventually you look back one day and you go, "Oh my God, I just rode my bike for 24 hours"?
I think I think it's kind of in you. I've always loved the challenge, and I've always, if somebody said to me that can't be done, I've always thought, all right, okay, I'll give it a try. But I've always been kind of, I like the really challenging stuff. And, a 50, 60 mile bike ride was the norm on a Sunday, 3-4 hours. And then I think I just thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. And I went and tried one as a team, and I thought, I think I might try this myself. And it's actually a hugely lonely thing to do. You're on a bike by yourself for 24 hours. But then once you've done one, you immediately say to yourself, I am never doing that again in my life. And then the next day you think, right, okay, what can I sign up for? When's the next one? It becomes quite addictive.
Tell me about the day. Tell me about that entire day. Now, for stroke survivors, the reason why I want to go into this is because it's going to give us an insight into your mindset. And I'm really intrigued about that. But tell me about that day. You wake up in the morning, you jump on the bike at 10 o'clock. And how many times do you stop? How do you go to the loo? How do you eat? What happens?
Usually it's a lap event. So I'll give you an example of the one that I've won a couple of times. It was actually a race circuit. So you just ride around the race circuit, which makes it even more boring and mind-numbing, actually. But you come past your pit crew every single lap. So I would say, right, okay, I'm going to ride for 2 hours. Then I'm going to come in for a 20-minute, 10-minute stop. Pit stop, change your clothes, toilet, food, out. Which becomes a challenge in itself, because you've got your pit crew, the stove, hot food, a comfy chair, and you could be in the depths of the night in Scotland. That's where I live. And one of the ones I did was in October. It was freezing. You're coming in at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and you've got nice sleeping bag, comfy bed, tent, which all your pit crew is sleeping. And the challenge is coming in and then getting yourself back in that saddle. But I always had this goal of, I want to achieve so many miles. I want to achieve so much elevation. And by sitting in a chair in a pit crew, you're not going to do that. So it's more mental than physical. And I think anybody's got it in them physically, but mentally, that's when you've got to have it. Definitely, it's a mental game.
I imagine myself on a bike, and I've never had the idea to ride for 24 hours, but I imagine myself on a bike, and at some point your legs start to hurt.
Yes.
And for you, how long does it take before your legs start to hurt, and for how many hours are you riding with your legs hurting?
About 18 hours of the 24, you're hurting. But I think this is why I enjoy ultra trail marathon running, which I've become since my stroke. So now I run 50-mile trail marathons, and that's since my stroke. So I could be running for 13 hours. So I'm lucky that I'm able to do this kind of stuff post-stroke, but it's still in me. There's something, I'm wired a certain way, I think, that I love. I don't love the pain, because that sounds really odd, but I love challenging my mind and my body to see at the end of it, I did it. Especially, it's even more special now that I've had a stroke. But yeah, you hurt for a lot of it. And you have some really dark spells, really mentally dark spells.
Is it egotistical?
Absolutely, yeah. Totally. Because at the end of it, you put a post on Facebook, you go, I did a 24-hour race, and you get all this praise, and you go, oh, aren't I fantastic? which is what I searched for pre-stroke, but post-stroke is completely different. Totally different.
Tell me.
There's not one bit of ego in it now. It's all about it. It's so personal to me now. So I'll give you an example. When I pre-stroke, I would chase times, speeds, power numbers, elevation, mileage. Where in September, I stood on the start line of a 50-mile ultra trail marathon. Bearing in mind I couldn't walk in February 2017. And I don't care how many people beat me. Don't care. I stopped for photographs. I stopped when I got tired. I stopped for rests. I stopped at feed stations, and it was the adventure and the journey. I believe that so much. I've got a memorial tattoo on my ribs about going through a journey and an adventure with a stroke survivor symbol. I'm passionate about that now. But you think, oh, I'll do it in 12 hours. 12 hours comes and goes. You might do it in 13. That 13 comes and goes. Right, okay, I might do it in 14. I don't care. What I care about is getting to the end and going, you know what, Andy, you've done it for you. That is so much different to try and chase praise and chase this. Oh, aren't you great? I don't care about that anymore. I've got nothing to prove after having stroke. Nothing.
There's the way you look to me is that most people wouldn't know that you've had a stroke.
No.
But what was it like in those first few weeks of stroke? How bad did it get?
I've never ever experienced, and I hope I never experience again, and I hope that nobody experiences the darkness of the stroke. It was horrendous. And I call my stroke a phase 1 and a phase 2. So, from being a 24-hour cyclist to sitting on a hospital bed and getting a knife, a fork, and a hairbrush put in front of you to say, right, show me that you can feed yourself.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Having to put your hand up to the nurse to say, can you take me to the toilet, please? Oh my God, it's horrendous. So a week after I got back from hospital, I was told my dad had acute myeloid leukemia and he was going to die. So I just had a stroke. I was recovering. I was learning to walk. I was learning to be independent. And I thought my dad's going to die. And all I could think about is when he dies, I want to carry his coffin. And I don't know what happened, but by May, I could walk, and I was lucky enough to carry his coffin. But the day after his funeral, it's as if my body and mind said, right, enough's enough. And I went, and it's as if I couldn't walk again.
Wow.
And I was back in hospital, back in hydrotherapy, back in physiotherapy, and I started 18 months of counselling, depression tablets, which I labelled as anxiety tablets, because I wouldn't take depression tablets. I don't get depressed. It was horrible. And that was the hardest 2 years of my life. And the darkness you experience in a 24-hour ride or a mountain marathon is nothing compared to the darkness of a stroke. And nobody sees that, because I'm physically I look okay, but nobody tells you about this stuff.
For sure, stroke makes it possible for you to relate to people who quote unquote have mental health issues.
Yeah.
The question though is, you were depressed. I know the stroke had a role to play there, but what's the underlying cause of the depression at the time? Have you been able to reflect on that? I know it happened sort of during the process of stroke and all that kind of stuff, but it's not the stroke that did it. There's an underlying cause. It's something else that's making you depressed. What was it, do you feel, that was creating emotions that you describe as depression?
Yeah, I think there was an element of dealing with my dad's death, because I had a very complicated relationship with him, really complicated, which I think fed the pre-stroke craving for praise. But that's a whole different conversation. But what probably fed it was that in my mind, I was weak, I wasn't good enough, I was disabled, I was brain damaged, I wasn't the guy my wife had married. And I struggled with confidence and cognitive thought, and I just thought that I'm a poorer version of what I was, and it really knocked me to six. I didn't like who I was. Where now I love who I am, and now I can say the stroke's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it's taken me a long time to say that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So I say that, and I've interviewed many, many people that say that, and they're all in different various levels of recovery. They have different physical symptoms, they have different deficits, but they can say that.
Yeah.
When, what, how do you get to the point where you know that you didn't like who you were, or you didn't like parts of yourself? What happens where one day you go, oh, I don't like that anymore about me or who I was or how I behaved? What's the aha moment? Like, how does that happen?
I don't think there's been like an epiphany or an aha moment. I think my counsellor, Louise, took the lid off a box and helped me verbalize everything that I've kept inside. I've got everything needs to be in boxes for me, must be in boxes. Still has to be, but I'm learning to leave those boxes open. And if something falls out the box, that's all right. But she made me question what I used to do, and my wife's been great for this as well. I mean, without my wife, I'd be a quivering wreck to this day. But she questions the whys, how, do you think, what about? And I'm still going through that process. So, I'm not saying that, oh, I look who I am and I'm fine every day. I don't, you never recover from a stroke. You adapt and you live with it. And you have reminders every day. So I'm on tablets morning and night. I've still got physical things I live with. I've got mental challenges. My thought process gets very mumbled up at times. But what made me realize is that maybe the way that I've rewired myself, and I've always had this visual picture that I need to do things right to get the wiring right in my head. I try and live by this phrase, be kind to yourself. And if I'm kind to me, I want to be kind to other people. And I've developed, I hope I've developed a more thoughtful process where I could be really selfish before, really selfish, quite short. And it's really hard to explain because there hasn't been an aha moment. It's kind of, I've developed into this more rounded pebble, and I used to be quite a jaggy rock.
I love it.
But I'm just a bit more, yeah, I'll just kind of roll with that. But I'm still hugely anxious, hugely anxious.
Let me explain how I feel about what you just said, because I relate to that. Being somebody that's growing up in Australian, our culture is very similar to the culture in Glasgow.
Yeah.
We blokes don't talk about problems, feelings, that type of thing.
Mhm.
We take the weight of the world on our shoulders and then we blame the world for it. Like we're the
Yeah,
ones at being impacted by everybody else, but it's not really
yeah.
everybody else. It's our own thoughts and processes. And then I realized after the stroke that what I wanted to do was, if I did die, I wanted to just make it so that my kids didn't think I was a complete idiot
Yeah.
afterwards, and that Dad was a good guy and he
Mhm.
taught us a lot, and we respect him and all that kind of stuff. Because before the stroke, I didn't feel that, but I never contemplated that because I never needed to. I was never. It never entered my mind that I might die at 37.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, I contemplated that, and the goal of having my kids look at their dad in a positive light, in remembrance of their dad, not just because he was dead, but because he really was a good guy, is what set in motion all the other changes that needed to happen that I didn't know they needed to happen.
Mhm.
And it's like that bike ride that you do or that run that you start. You know where the goal is. You don't know on the track what all the obstacles are going to be.
Yeah.
If you have to think about all those obstacles, you're never going to solve those problems because the obstacles are potentially endless. But what you actually do get is you get problems that pop up that you were unaware of. And with the help of somebody like a counselor, psychologist, coach, whatever, they give you the permission to open the box. And when they
Mhm.
open the box and something comes out, you address it when it comes out. And once it's addressed, you close the box and then it's kind of done. It's been addressed.
Mhm.
It might not be solved totally, but the fact that it was addressed kind of enables for that hurdle to just be moved beyond, and then
Yeah.
working towards the next hurdle, which you're completely not expecting the next hurdle again,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then it just pops up. Does that resonate with you? That's how I got 2 strokes, the best thing that ever happened to me. It just happened one day. But when I look at all the things that I addressed, there was 10 specific key things that I addressed that other stroke survivors who say that also addressed, but they didn't set out to address them. They set out to be a better version of themselves in the future.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I can relate to that because um, I think I am a better. So it's a really difficult one because I think I was a nice guy before my stroke. Otherwise, why would my wife have married me?
Yeah.
Um, but I just think I'm a better version of myself. So example was I've learned to open up and allow people in. So pre-stroke, it would be a case of, no, no, I'm fine, I'll deal with that. I don't need your help, I'll deal with that. Where now, I've got no qualms about going, do you know what, I need some help. And that's how my counselling started. I broke down and my wife said, we need to get your help. And I rang the counsellor up and I said, help me, I need help. I've never done that before in my life, ever. But now I don't have a problem with showing my emotions, letting people know how I feel, asking for help, letting people in. And I think I'm a lot more considerate in my approach. And yes, I have opinions where instead of giving them and saying this is the correct way, I kind of offer Just this is what I think. You know, do with it what you want, but this is what I think. And I've found now that people openly not ask my advice. That I know I'm not some prophet. I don't mean that.
Yeah, I know.
It's really hard to explain, but I've probably got quite a considered approach because my attitude now is if I can deal with a stroke and survive a stroke and come out the other end a positive human being, I can deal with anything. So if somebody comes to with a little problem, always in the back of my mind going, it isn't a stroke, so it's not as bad as a stroke. So I've got a kind of coping mechanism for lots and lots of stuff. So you have a system you go through.
Yeah.
And, you know, my boxes and my visualization and my muddy and my clear water and my Lego toys, all these systems in my mind, it's just made me a more, not sensible is the wrong word, but level-headed, I would support. I think I'm trying to say.
I like it. What were you afraid of in the past when somebody offered you help or when people were trying to get in to your psyche or to your emotional side? What were you afraid of? Why was there such a barrier around letting people in?
Demonstrating failure. I didn't want anybody to know that I ever failed or I needed. It's quite a northeastern man mindset. My dad was the same, where you know you're only a man if you're strong and dependable and you don't cry and you don't show your feelings and you're not a failure. You know what? I do all that stuff now, and I'm fine with that. But I think that the overriding thing was that I was petrified of anybody thinking I was a failure.
And where did you get the definition of failure? You got it from your dad, who was afraid of anyone thinking that he was a failure. In fact,
Yes.
the opposite is true when you cry, when you express your emotions, when you apologize for acting like an idiot,
Yeah.
when you can just experience raw emotions for just a short amount of time. You're actually the opposite of a failure. You're a winner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what life is supposed to be. These ridiculous ideas of what winning and losing, failing and succeeding are come
Mm-hmm.
from a stupid place.
Yeah. I know. Terrible. You know, some people. Well, not some people. Me. I would put myself under so much pressure to perform, whether that be at work or on my bike or anything, where in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. There's far, far more important things. And, you know, what's important to me now is time with my wife, time doing things that I like and I love for the right reasons. And like I said before, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. Some people say that, oh, you run ultra marathons now to prove that you still do it. No, I don't. I do the stuff with an absolute passion and love that I have for it. I like proving stuff to me, but I'm still, you know, I still can't get rid of the fact that I've had a stroke and I love proving that I can still challenge myself. But if I don't do it one day and I say, do you know what, I'm not gonna finish this race, this ride, this run, this bit of work, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at all.
I've got to that point of being able to get to a stage where I know my body's saying rest, relax,
Yes.
don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And that was something that I hadn't been able to do in the past. I had to push through and I had to find a way. And I used to also do it begrudgingly. You know, those difficult things that I knew that I didn't want to do, but I was still doing, I used to do them begrudgingly.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
used to find myself getting cranky at the world around me for, you know, supposedly making me do these things that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And what I realized was that I was focusing on the problem all the time. I was focusing on the problem, the amount of problems, how many problems there were, the impossibility of solving the problems. I focused all my time on all that stuff. And then at some point,
Yeah.
I had to focus on solutions because I had the day before stroke, I had 1 million problems. The day after stroke, I had 20 million problems. There was no hope in being able to put all my effort into focusing on problems anymore. I had to focus on solutions. And that is kind of what moved me through that whole pushing through barriers that I didn't want to push through, because there was no enjoyment out of it. Forget about pushing through a barrier of an ultra marathon. I know at the end for you, there's some kind of a pleasurable experience from it. But for me, I wasn't doing things that I loved. I was doing things that I hated for other people, and it was terrible. So where are you at with other parts of your life? Because at some point, I imagine you had to go back to work. You had to do all those things. How did that go? Before you answer that, let me just go and get a tissue for a sec.
Go for it.
Okay.
So straight after my stroke, obviously, I was obviously off work, and my time was spent walking for 30 seconds on a treadmill every day, and bossing balls and all that kind of stuff. But I went back to work far too quickly, because I still had a bit of the pre-stroke mindset where I need to demonstrate I'm okay. And I went back and I graduated return. I worked for Vodafone at the time, who were hugely supportive. They were really, really good. And I kind of changed roles, and I went back and I graduated return. But I've never experienced tiredness like it. The mental drain was huge. But then in the May, when my dad passed away, and I just crumbled beyond belief. I was off work for about 3 months. And that's when it hit me, where I thought I probably rushed the first part of my recovery. This time I'm going to really get it right. But even now, I've got to be very, very conscious of tiredness, and I manage my tiredness very, very cleverly, because I recognize it now. And like you said, if I'm tired, I stop. I don't push through anything. I stop. I still work in telecoms, so it's hugely demanding with laptops and projects and costings and all that kind of stuff. But I've learned now that I have to work in a different way. And if I don't finish something, that's fine. And if I do, great, that's a win. If I need to take a rest, my goodness, I will take a rest. But the rest of my life is as I want it now. I don't do anything for the sake of doing it. I don't do anything because I feel I should. If I want to do it, I'll do it. If I don't, I don't. And my life is hugely different now, because it's not this, I must ride my bike, I must do this, I must prove X, Y, and Z. And me and my wife are so much happier for it as well. But I've learned how to read the signs, because a stroke survivor has signs all the time. And you just can't, if you ignore them, if I ignore the signs, I'm game over for a few days. I'm done, gone.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there.
Yeah, I'm the same. You can create more suffering during stroke recovery by being as stupid as you were before the stroke.
Yeah, definitely.
And the stroke causes enough pain and suffering and problems just on its own. You exacerbating that is not helpful in any way, shape, or form. And it's really important that you take responsibility for the part of the suffering that you're creating, and stop being a martyr, and stop being somebody who needs to have the upper hand on stroke. You're not going to get it. It's not possible. Stroke is going to win every single one of those battles, and I think you can work with stroke. And I think that's one of the gifts that stroke gives, is that it gives a lot of information about when it's time to stop and when it's time to rest, where before mind over matter, we push through the body's pains, we push through the body's signals and information that it's telling us, and we just get to the point of feeling really crap for a certain amount of days, and we haven't become aware of how we got to that point. But if we paid attention, there was plenty of information available. That concept, though, that we're talking about is still bizarre that I'm speaking to you about it, because you still do push through pain barriers, and you still do things that most people don't do, even though if you decide to stop an ultra marathon race at mile 30, you've still run 30 bloody miles to get there.
Yeah, I know. It's quite an odd concept. Because some people say, "You do what? How far have you ran?" But again, it kind of goes back to the mindset I've now got, where I've got no agenda whatsoever. So,
it's like Forrest Gump. Just start running.
Yeah, exactly. Do you know what? It's really quite liberating. It's fantastic, because I put my stuff on and I go out, and I just kind of roll with it. It's fun. It's great. If I'm last, first, 7th, 20th, a million, doesn't really matter. But that's kind of how I approach everything now. Strokes kind of give me this helicopter view, because I'm still quite anxious, not quite, that's a lie. I'm hugely anxious, right? And I've got loads of these mental processes I go through, and I can be quite obsessive, and I'm useless at making decisions, but I'm aware of all this. So, if I obsess about something, it's like I can remove myself and go, I know I'm doing that, but I'll be fine in a couple of days. So I allow myself to be obsessive about something, because it will just kind of fall away. I don't oh my God, I'm obsessing over something. I kind of go, I'm watching myself being obsessive, but it'll pass in a few days.
Nice. That's so good. Instead of obsessing that you're obsessing and making it more complicated, the obsession, what you do is one part of you says, I'm going to allow that obsession to occur, and when it goes away, it'll be gone. And that is how I describe to people who I'm helping with stroke recovery and coaching to do about emotions. Like, observe yourself to be an idiot, let yourself be an idiot, and then apologize for being an idiot when the time comes.
Yeah.
And then that way you're giving the other person permission in your life to also be an idiot, because they are normal, and we're not special just because we've had a stroke. They're normal. They're going to have a bad day. And if you can do the same helicopter view for them, you're going, okay, they're being an idiot. They're going to get over it, and eventually things will go back to normal.
Yeah.
That's a really great approach.
I've always had a good guy and a bad guy. And pre-stroke, the bad guy ruled everything. So the bad guy comes knocking quite often. But now the good guy has a real voice. And most of the time, the good guy, I get on really well with this guy now.
Yep.
But I allow the good guy to communicate with the bad guy. And this might sound like, oh my God, he's mental.
No,
but this is just a really good, I don't let the bad guy rule me anymore. The good guy negotiates with the bad guy.
Awesome.
And I listen to the good guy now. But they're always there. They're never going to go away.
Let me ask you, if you can identify in your body, which organ does the bad guy reside in?
Yeah.
Awesome. And which organ does the good guy reside in?
Heart.
So that is not a coincidence that I said that and that you pointed there. The head is a neural network. It has billions of neurons. It does thinking, it does making meaning, it does creativity, it does all that sort of stuff. The heart is also a neural network. People don't realize that it has between 30,000 and 120,000 neurons.
Mhm.
It has memory. That's why you hear that song and you remember a loved one from 10
Yeah.
years ago or 20 or 30 years ago. And not only is the heart a neural network, that's where your emotions are. That's where you touch when you say I love you to somebody that's on the other side of the planet and you're doing a Zoom call. But your
Yeah.
gut is also a neural network. It has the same amount of neurons in it that the cat's brain has.
Right.
So it's a full level of intelligence. And when you ask people if I ask you, where do you take action from? Where do you take action from?
Depends who's talking to me.
But what
Um,
makes you move forward? What makes you give you the push to go forward? Most people will point to their action center is their gut. I took gutsy action,
right. Yeah. Get what you mean. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's a neural network. And dopamine and a lot of the neurotransmitters that the brain uses actually are created in the gut. The immune
Right.
system is supported in the gut. And if we've got a healthy gut, we've got a healthy brain because there's more ability for the brain to take those neurotransmitters from the gut and use them when they need them. Dopamine,
Mhm.
serotonin, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very interesting that you have identified these good guy and bad guy kind of concept, and that's how you describe it, but they reside somewhere in your body, and it's really easy for
Yeah.
you to point to them. So when you listen to your heart, your life expands. When you listen to your head, you become anxious when you
Yeah.
overthink. But
Yeah.
your head, really, its job is to analyze things like my heart desires a bike ride. Your head's responsibility is how am I going to make that happen and give me the creative solutions to the problems that my gut is telling me are not are difficult to overcome for me to do this, because the gut is telling you, "Whoa, I'm feeling like there's knots in my stomach. I'm feeling
Yeah.
uneasy in my stomach about making this decision, right?"
Yeah.
And the head's going, "No, don't worry about that. We've got solutions. We'll ride. There'll be a guy at the 30-kilometer mark or mile mark who's going to give us food. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. If something bad goes wrong, we'll be able to repair that, fix that puncture, fix that chain. Whatever the problems that the gut comes up with to stop movement from happening, the head does the solutions. So you make business decisions at the head and at the gut, but the head does the calculations. If the numbers work, then we move forward. If the gut's happy and we solve the gut's problems, we move forward. But you don't make business decisions with a heart. You don't buy a company because I would love to buy that without looking at the numbers.
Yeah.
So this is resonating with you, right? And
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
doing this every day, but sometimes they get the mix, they get the method incorrect. So they use the head to make heart-based decisions, and they use the gut to make head-based decisions, and they don't work. And when you're using the head to make decisions of the heart and of the gut, you're over analyzing
Yeah.
and you're causing anxiety and you're causing inability to move forward. So all of that I just said is to ask you, what do you get anxious about? What does your head make you anxious about? And how do you do anxiety?
I get anxious about decision making that possibly affects other people. I actually get anxious about general decision making, which stems back to your confidence still it's still growing. It's not where it was. It's just a different type of confidence I've got. I'm hugely more confident in some areas than others. I get quite obsessively anxious about things that go wrong. Um, I get OCD kind of anxious about things that just aren't right, and if that's not in the right place, oh my god, I'm anxious about that, and it needs to get put right. It's quite trivial things that I get anxious about. then that anxiety turns to a bit of obsessive OCD kind of action. And does that answer it?
It kind of does. So do you give yourself the same helicopter opportunity when you're anxious to view yourself being anxious and allow yourself to be anxious, knowing that it'll pass? Do you do that for that?
I try to, because I know that if I don't, it will escalate. Then it will stick, and it'll break the processes I have in my mind, and I need to go through those processes to put things in place for me. And they might not be in place for you or my wife or anyone else, but if it fits into a little place in my mind, then you know what, that's okay. And it might be the wrong place, but it can live there for a while. And I've learned to allow it to live there for a while. But I do take that view, because if I don't quite know where I would end up.
Yep. So that I asked you specifically so the people listening can go, maybe I'm not taking the third person view and I am stuck in the problem rather than observing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're stuck in the problem, you're causing the problem, you're making the problem worse.
Yeah.
If you're observing yourself being stuck in the problem, you've separated yourself at one level and you're giving yourself the opportunity to A, observe yourself, and B, be in the problem. And as you're observing yourself, you're able to pay attention to how stupid it is, this problem that you're potentially creating unnecessarily, but from a good cause perhaps, but realistically unnecessarily. And then as a curious person observing yourself being stuck in the problem, you can go, how is that serving me and why am I even doing it? And can I find a way to alleviate the need to do it? Because all you've done is create neural patterns and pathways to support that. What are the opposite neural patterns and pathways you can create to replace that?
There's another thing that goes alongside that though, Bill, and for me it's so pre-stroke I would focus on the end result. So whatever I'm doing, whatever decision, it's the end result, and that's all I would focus on. I'm not able to deal with the gravity of that now, whatever it may be. Could be a small journey, a big decision, whatever. There is an end result, but what I'll do now is to complement the potential anxiety and the view I'm taking is, right, okay, what's the first little step? Right, okay, win. I've done that one. That leads to the second one. It will eventually get me to that big end result that is there, but I'm not focusing on that because you know what? I might not get there this time.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I've done A, B, C, D, E, and I might just manage F today.
Yeah.
Where before, if I don't get to Z, the world's going to crumble.
Yeah.
But if you tie in that step by step with the, okay, I'm aware of that, and I'm going to allow that to happen, oh my God, again, it's so liberating. It kind of smooths things out.
Yeah. It's the mountain analogy that I like to use. It's like Everest is there. If we try to get to Everest and think about every possible thing that can go wrong to get to Everest, you may as well not even start. But if you set out on a walk, and when you get to base camp, you've achieved all these things that you never knew you could achieve. And now you're at base camp and you reflect on all those new experiences, new solutions that you found, new barriers that you pushed through, all these things. If you focus on everything that is better and different about you for just getting to base camp, then there's no point getting to Everest. Is not necessary because there's so much gold and so much beauty in what you've already achieved. And now, if you think that base camp was really easily doable, take the lessons that you learned that helped you get to base camp and just use them on the next journey and allow you to get a little further beyond base camp and a little further up the mountain, always without the mountain, the peak being the must do. It's just, wouldn't it be great if I could get there? and reflect on all the lessons and the journey and all the amazing things in the path.
But do you know what as well that I've learned, and it's taken me 3 years to get to where I am, and it's still a huge journey, is I've learned not to fight what it does to me, because do you know what? I can't change a damn thing.
Yep.
I've had a stroke. Part of the facts are, part of my brain has died and it's never coming back.
Yep.
I can't change that. So did I accept it at the start? No. Do I accept it now? Yes. And things are different. And the minute anyone who's suffered a stroke can start, they might not wholly accept that, but accept part of that and say, do you know what? There's no point in fighting it because that's wasted energy. And this goes back to, you just got to kind of roll with it, because I can't do a thing about it. I can't, it's happened. So what's the best path to follow? Instead of this fight, oh, woe is me, I've had a stroke. That's just a waste of energy. But it takes a long time to get there.
It can take a long time, and it can take a short amount of time. It just depends on who you are and how willing you are to be flexible now. I'm building a course. It's called 10 Steps to Brain Health for Stroke Survivors. It's not really about brain health, but one of the modules that I've just done recently is mindset. I've been planning this course for 4 years. I cannot build 10 steps to a course in 12 months or 18 months or 6 months. I just don't have the capacity to do it. It's going to take as long as it takes. And when it's ready, even if it's in 10 years, it's going to be valuable, because lessons to stroke recovery don't change. They're always the same lessons. One of the modules is mindset. And with mindset, I try and talk about whose mindset do you have? Whose mindset are you running? Is it your parents? Is it your teachers? Is it your doctors? Is it your brothers? Is it somebody else's mindset that has been combined over these years and you've taken on as your own mindset, and it's not serving you, and you haven't become aware of that because you just haven't asked, no one's asked you the right question about, like, whose life are you really leading? Are you running? And for me, that was one of the big revelations in my life, was I realized that I was running fears, anxieties, and all that kind of bullshit from other people, and they came from various parts of my life. And now I recognize when I'm running those patterns from other people that they've instilled in me, and I stop it a lot sooner than I used to. And I have that conversation with, well, that's just my dad's pattern. I don't need to run that anymore. He ran it because it was useful in the time that he grew up in to get him through a problem that he had, and he didn't realize that he could stop doing that. He just continued doing that. I'm not going to continue doing that until I'm 80. There's no point. There's no chance.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel. That's how I feel like people who are ultra marathon runners and all this kind of stuff, even you're running somebody else's mindset to keep a part of it, to keep you running to 60 miles. You're running somebody else's mindset. And that could be the guy that did it before you. And that's okay, because that's part of a run. That is part of a marathon. That is part of an ultra marathon. But that is not part of stroke recovery. That mindset is the correct one for running an ultra marathon. It's got nothing to do with stroke recovery, because if you keep pushing and you keep trying to get the 60-mile mark of a stroke recovery, it's going to fail. It's not going to succeed. The mindset needs to be flexible and applied to each individual situation of your life appropriately.
I agree.
Tell me about when it happened. What were some of those conversations, real serious ones, that you had with your wife? Did you have them?
Yes, I did, and I was kind of racked with guilt. Although the stroke wasn't I thought, had I caused the stroke? It was a cryptogenic stroke, so we have no idea why it happened. It was a massive clot at the back of my head, affected both sides of my body. So the conversations we had were, will I ever be the same? Can I work again? Can can we work as a team? And, I remember thinking to myself, I'm not the guy she married. Will she want to split? Which she was mortified at. She's like, oh my God, no. Whatever you are, you're still Andy. I love you and I'm never going anywhere. And that was like, oh, thank God for that. I'm not going to be stuck in a home somewhere getting fed. But yeah, there was some pretty harsh conversations, and when you're in the depths of anxiety and depression, you can be a really nasty person to be around, unconsciously, because going on depression tablets is great. Nobody tells you coming off them is the worst thing you'll ever do in your life, apart from having a stroke.
Right.
I was a horrendous person because it took me about 5-6 weeks to come off them, and for that period of time, I was horrible, just horrible. Nobody tells you that part, and that was some really brutal conversations about for that period of time the person I've become. But when it happened, yeah, there's some quite life-changing conversations you have because there's an element of you feeling sorry for yourself. You're then labelled, you're a statistic. Yeah, it's like how am I the husband that you had? You married me 3 years ago. Now I can't walk. Brilliant. Cut loose. Go. Leave me here. Which doesn't happen, but you have. Yeah. I'm here struggling to verbalise it because it's just so horrible.
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle to get the words out because I'm like, oh my God, I don't actually want to visit how bad that was. Horrible.
I really appreciate the way that we've had this conversation because you verbalize some things that I can't verbalize. And the reason why I have podcasts is to give people the opportunity to say all those things about stroke that I want to, but I don't know how to. And I find that every person that I interview, there's gold comes out of their mouth every single episode. This is going to be episode 130. So
super.
If you ever thought you were alone in stroke recovery, if you ever thought that you were the only one experiencing something, just pick up one of those episodes and listen to it. You are not going to feel alone anymore. You're not going to feel weird, strange, different. And hopefully what that does is that creates an opportunity for people to question everything they've ever done or ever been and ever thought, so that they can start from scratch and redefine their life and redefine who they are and how they can go about their life, even after they are completely, their identity is completely tested, changed, whatever you want to call it, and they can't recognize themselves again. Like it's an opportunity for a rebirth. And I say that from my perspective, and you as a stroke survivor might not be there yet, but one day I hope that stroke survivors get there. I know that you're well on your way of redefining who you are and completing the rebirth. And that makes me really excited. That makes me really happy to have this conversation with you, because I think it offers hope for other people.
And you know what, Bill? That puts a huge smile on my face, because I feel hugely privileged to have been able to chat to you and tell a story. And if one person was to listen to this podcast and it helps one person, that's a huge tick in the box for me, because nobody can write down on paper the challenge of a stroke. You can't define it, right? And if it helps one person even find a glimmer of hope or get on a slightly different path, you know what? That would make me so happy. And it's any help that's offered to anyone that's been going through this is absolute gold dust. It really is. It really is.
That's a beautiful way to end the podcast. Andy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Discover how to heal your brain after stroke. Go to recoveryafterstroke.com. Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.